以下為個人意見節目，內容提及嘅所有政綱及言論均以嘉賓原話為準，敬請留意。
市選論英雄 Municipal Election Talks 節目主持 Adam
Kern。Hello， 大家好，我哋歡迎大家聽眾們嚟到我哋呢個市選嘅論英雄。今日係有我 Adam 姜啦，咁請嚟嘅我哋嘅參選嘅朋友咧，就同大家介紹一下。咁呢位咧就叫 Erwin Sniedzins。Erwin Sniedzins 咧就係會參選呢個多倫多市長嘅選舉嘅吓。咁到底 Erwin 以前就做過咩？到底佢又想當選之後做啲即係會點樣嘅政績咧？咁我想同大家介紹。咁市選咧就其實而家有51位已經即係報咗名參選嘅。咁幾多參選嘅人嘅？咁所以今年嘅市長嘅選舉咧係幾精彩嘅一件事吓。咁除咗即係好出名嗰啲啦 ，Olivia 啊，或者係阿 Rockford 啊 ，John Tory 啊咁啊，咁我哋請到呢位 Erwin 嘅朋友咧，亦都聽下佢點解要選呢個市長，同埋會唔會真係選到佢咧咁樣吓？咁Hi，good morning，Erwin， how are you？
I'm很好。I'm very well, thank you.
嗱，我盡量做一啲翻譯俾大家啦吓。咁期間咧，大家因為 Erwin 係講英文啦，咁我盡量亦都保留佢個英文嘅神髓同埋佢嘅 personality 俾大家認識嘅吓。咁就其實我首先咧好大膽，因為 Erwin 咧同我哋係好多關係嘅，佢識中文嘅，識一啲。咁太太咧今日亦都上嚟我哋錄音室啦，咁叫做 Flora， 咁一齊接受我哋嘅訪問嘅。Hi Flora， 你好。
你好。
Okay, so let's start from not a very traditional way when I do an interview with a politician because of your special talent.
Okay.
Shall we surprise our audience?
Well, I hope so.
Okay, Erwin can speak a very interesting poem. It's better than my daughter. So I will let him start from that poem and see and our audience will be interested to listen.
重慶民語講easy day 上上各位頭望民語地頭市區向
Very good.
I know my tones aren't the best, but
very good. 咁李白嘅詩佢都講得到啊，咁真係好犀利，同我哋好似拉上咗一啲近距離咁樣啊吓。咁但係先問下佢先啦。So let's start from that question you've been asked for a million times, and or maybe you ask you question yourself too. Why do you want to run Toronto Mayor?
Well, there are several reasons that got me involved and certainly interested. One of the first reasons was I live at Eglinton and Yonge, and I lived there most of my life, and actually before the subway was even built and stopped at Eglinton. And I find that when I try to get on the subway at Eglinton and Yonge, I just can't get on, in the mornings. And that was really a big perturbance for my particular thinking. I said, why not, And then basically I felt that the subway itself, after 60 years, it just wasn't keeping up with a lot of the other subways that I've been on, like in Beijing, Hong Kong, etc. So that bothered me. Then the antics that were going on with City Hall, with Mr. Ford and the council. And the more I looked at it, the more I realized the city was in rapid decline. So I vowed that I got to do something about it. I feel I have a responsibility. The city's been very good to me. And so that's got my attention, and that's one of the reasons I got involved. And also the fact that people are raising a lot of money, taxpayers are paying a lot of money, and we're finding that, overrun on Sony centers, Union Station, so the money is just being squandered, not being looked after properly. So I wanted to get in and do something about it. That got me involved.
Yeah, let me do some translation to our audience.
Okay, sure.
咁我解釋少少啦吓，咁就Erwin 咧就住喺 Yonge and Eglinton 嘅，即係喺正 Toronto 嘅中心啦。咁佢第一 開頭誘發到佢想選市長咧，就係個交通問題啊，即係好塞車啊，又搭唔到呢個subway啊咁樣嚇。咁亦都咧喺一路喺佢住咗好多年啦。咁我哋之後再問下佢嘅即係個歷史啊，同埋佢自己做過啲咩啦。咁就覺得嗰個市政咧就一路下滑啊，個行政方面，咁亦都俾個稅方面咧，亦都俾得好多啊，使錢就使得好犀利。咁所以咧佢就話毅然咧就即係不如自己參選呢個市長啦咁樣。So maybe we can understand more about your background. So before, what have you been doing?
Well, I've been doing a lot and very eclectic experiences. My background actually is working with Xerox Canada. I was with Xerox for about 18 years as in senior management positions, and I actually resigned in 1989 to put an expedition together to climb Mount Everest and to raise $1 million for a charity called Rett syndrome, R-E-T-T syndrome, which only affects girls, but girls are born normal and then they start to regress. And so that took me about 3 years to put a team together to get the training that I had to do, and then from that I basically ended up creating a movie called The Climb for Hope movie, which won the Gold Award at the New York International Film Festival.
咁首先解釋一下咧，就係Erwin 咧就喺Xerox 咧，即係個好大嘅copier 嘅公司咧，就做咗好多年嘅行政人員啦嚇。咁之後咧，佢就好得意，佢就去咗爬呢個喜馬拉雅山。咁咧呢個係一個籌款嘅活動嚟嘅，即係籌到好多款嘅，即係超過100萬嘅嚇。咁亦都特別係籌呢個叫做 Rett syndrome 啊嚇。咁呢個 Rett 係 R-E-T-T 係嗰啲neuro 即係有啲即係多數喺個細路女嗰度發生嘅嚇。咁就為咗嗰件事佢係籌款就好熱心，係直情係上咗去呢個高山嘅嚇。咁就 so after Mount Everest, have you been actually up there for? What is your experience there?
Well, my experience is, if you're going to climb a mountain, why not climb the tallest one in the world? And a lot of it was training. I went to Russia to train in high altitude training because in the Rockies they don't go high enough for you to acclimatize, and so. And met with Riza Gorbachev, when I was in Moscow, and she helped us to get to peak communism and, help us to climb that particular mountain, which is at 25,000 feet. And so there's a lot of training to be able to do before you start climbing Mount Everest, right?
Yeah.
And putting a team together, and so that's what we had to do to be able to get on top of that.
嗱，咁佢嗰個爬山嗰個經歷咧就好得意嘅，亦都係一個比較即係好，即係因為佢籌款啦，咁亦都同呢個戈爾巴喬夫當年蘇聯嘅總理夫人啊，咁亦都有好多瓜葛，好多幫手咁樣嘅。So but what does it give you the experience or inspiration in running Toronto Mayor?
Well, I think because I have lots of experience and skill sets. It's like a carpenter with a tool bag, and because of all my corporate training and also, I have a small business. I started a small business, and I took that small business onto the U.S. stock market. So I know what it has to be successful in a big company, because Xerox, I started when it was $2 billion a year. When I left, it was $12 billion a year. And also starting a small company, how you struggle, how you keep afloat, how you make a profit, how do you raise funds, and how do you get into the stock market, right? So that allowed me to look at that. And also because I've been doing over 30 years a lot of charity work, working on a lot of causes and helping various communities with their particular issue. So I think basically those skill sets allow me to come in and help to Toronto and help with some of the issues that we're having in Toronto. And we have some major issues, and you need some leadership there. And I really believe you need transparency. A lot of stuff seems to be happening. Nobody seems to know why until all of a sudden it's in the news. And you need accountability. Who's accountable for that, okay? Is it the mayor, okay, and the councillors? Because they're the ones that I have the oversight on the $10 billion that Toronto gets as a budget every year. And so consequently, if you want the results, you got to have the accountability. So that's caused me to get involved.
咁我哋聽到佢啦，就係 Erwin 咧有好多做生意嘅經驗啦。除咗佢喺 Xerox 係一個大嘅公司啦，由一個2 billion 嘅公司咧，到佢走嘅時候咧，變成一個12個 billion 嘅公司，即係 run 得一個好成功嘅企業嘅行政人員之餘咧，咁佢自己咧亦都做生意啦，亦都自己嘅生意啦喺美國上市啊咁樣。咁喺佢個爬山嘅經驗咧，我哋問佢：咦，咁同爬山有啲咩關係咧？咁喺佢個爬山嘅歷程裏邊咧，就接觸到好多團隊嘅精神啊，亦都係有啲即係社會公益嘅事業啦。咁令佢咧對呢個市政咧就有一個好大嘅抱負，就想將呢個市政咧就做得好似佢對佢嘅工作咁咧做得更加好一啲咁樣嚇。咁 other than mountain climbing, so what else have you been doing which is relevant to your election?
Well, I've been working a lot with the communities and trying to find out what the issues are, looking at how we can get the subway systems running again more effectively, and what do we need to do to make that happen. In part of my journeys, I've also worked with like even the Chinese community. One of the reasons I was able to actually climb Mount Everest because of the friendship from the Chinese-Canadian Friendship Association, because they actually helped us to get the permit to climb Mount Everest, and so I've always had a great affinity with the Chinese community, right? And very much so. So it's the same thing. I'm trying to determine, what are the issues, how we can help, all the various communities. There's 140 different sort of communities in Toronto because it's the most diverse city in the world.
咁我又解釋一下啦，就係 Erwin 咧，就其實佢同我哋中國人嗰個接觸咧係幾多幾密切下嘅。就正如佢頭先講啦，佢爬呢個喜馬拉雅山，咁大家知道啦，喜馬拉雅山咧係連接中國啦、西藏啦、蘇聯啊咁樣嘅。咁佢有蘇聯嘅頭先講過啦，高爾巴喬夫嘅太太又即係好幫到佢手啦。咁去中國嘅時間咧，咁佢都要申請一啲 permit 咧，先至可以去爬嗰個山嘅。咁所以佢對呢個中國嘅同我哋咧，好似一個好接近嘅一個關係咁樣啊。當然頭先一開場佢已經講咗一首李白嘅詩啦，咁我覺得即係好有感覺咁樣嘅嚇。We just mentioned about your poem. So where did you learn that poem of Chinese? Is my daughter couldn't even do that because she's born and raised here.
Well, I had a Chinese partner, and he said to me many years ago, you got to learn this poem, right? And he was from Hong Kong, Cantonese, so I started to learn it in Cantonese. But then when I went to China, I saw it on the school walls, the poem, and that's naturally in Mandarin. So now when I do that poem, I got a bit of Cantonese, a bit of Mandarin, and it doesn't come across that as well. But to me, it certainly has a lot of resonance because you have a lot of immigrants, and they're coming. It's about the fatherland. Sort of looking down, seeing frost on the ground. So it sort of makes me, when I travel a lot, to think about李白。
OK， 係啊，李白啊，佢頭先講，你哋冇聽錯。咁佢係以前有一個即係中國香港嘅一個合夥人咁教佢嘅。咁佢又覺得好有意思。咁但係我哋又識好多外國人啦，呢個加拿大嚟嘅，但係就真係能夠講到一首李白嘅詩咧。暫時我好似淨係識得 Erwin 係咁樣嘅嚇。咁我哋想繼續問下佢啦。其實 Erwin 咧就帶咗好多其他佢個人嘅資料，佢做過啲咩俾我哋睇嘅，唔係話淨係爬山嘅。咁仲有好多，其實佢出書同埋出啲教育嘅產品咧，都係幾多嘅嚇。而家有54位係選多倫多，除咗我哋識得嘅 Olivia Chow 啊，即係 Rockford 啊，John Tory 啊，就仲有Erwin 咁樣嘅嚇。咁54個競選者之中，我哋問下 Erwin 覺得自己嘅勝數有幾多 ？Yeah, so what is your chance you think for yourself?
Well, my chance is as good as anyone else's because when I did Mount Everest, people said, "Oh, I didn't know you're a mountaineer," and I said, "I'm not, but if you're going to do it, you go and commit yourself, and you end up doing it. And I end up getting 89% of the mountain. Mm-hmm. So likewise here, it's you have all these people running, and I believe I have the better skills, experiences, and I can bring the leadership that's required, to the city without the acrimonious sort of behavior that's going on at City Hall. So to me, if you're not in the game, you never know how far you can get. And really what people have to do is take a look at myself and all the other people and make the best decision. The most difficult part of this whole campaign is having people realize that I'm in the game, that I'm actually on the playing field, and not on the side bench as the mainstream media does, because all you do is you hear about the four candidates. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's very upsetting. And the media is basically preventing all the other candidates with their ideas to get some type of platform. So the voters, there's 1.6 million voters in Toronto, and they only think that there's four people running. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's wrong. It's not constitutional. And so I basically did a sort of a summary of a snapshot of time in 1984, what people thought and felt about Toronto. And back then, it was clean, green, and safe. And so now, basically, 30, almost 50 years later, we're going on to looking at the 200-year sort of celebration. But I wanted to capture the communities, what they felt, and have their personal comments. And it's a family heirloom. It's 5,000 copies of the book was printed, sold at $49 each. And the only place you can find that now is in the reference library in downtown. And so consequently, it's a family heirloom that's passing on from one generation to the next as a coffee table.
Mm-hmm. So it's basically a history material that in between 84.
Well, it's snapshot of 1984, and we had three prime ministers that year. We had the Queen, and we had the Pope, and it captures all that sort of moments in time. Mm-hmm. And what happened in Toronto, in 150 years after it was sort of inaugurated, right? So, it has all the comments of over 3,000 people, and has 7 categories: academia, it has science, it has business. So all these sort of people are there telling you what they think about Toronto.
And there are about, I see that 600 people almost.
Yes.
In this book.
Yeah, no, there's 3,000.
3,000 people.
Yeah,
oh, okay.
Yeah. There's 600 pictures in there.
Oh, 600 pictures.
Photos.
Oh, okay. 佢有一本書，其實in that way I have to explain that you are not a stranger to Toronto.
No.
就另外呢本書有啲意思嘅，就係話，即係有時我哋話做一個市長咁計啦，咁佢對嗰個市有幾熟悉咧？當然 Erwin 係住喺即係 Yonge and Eglinton 咧，咁跟住好熟嗰個區嘅。咁另外就係佢有本書叫 Who's Who in Toronto， 有成3000人 involve 喺嗰本書度，就係講由譬如話80幾年啦，即係30年前多倫多有啲咩人發生過，有啲好多唔同嘅市長啊，即係安省嘅省議員嘅人物誌嘅一個即係一個片段嘅歷史嘅發生，咁佢想做一個記錄留俾其他人知道，咁係一本好好嘅書嚟嘅。如果 Erwin 你做到一個市長，到底唔係話爬山啊嗰啲嘢先啦，你會到底係想點樣處理嗰個市政嘅事務咧？咁樣。So Erwin, let's just say you are elected tomorrow. Mm-hmm. What would you do? What is your plan, spending budget, and what is your plan to do with Toronto?
Well, I have a platform. My platform started, back in April, and it's a $20 billion platform. $15 billion was allocated for mobility. What I call mobility is moving people around. It's not just subways and LRTs. It's actually how do you help people to move around from one area of Toronto to the next. So I basically proposed that $15 billion, and lucky for me, my job is almost done because the new Liberal government, Wynne, has dedicated $15 billion for Toronto's transit. So that part of it. So my first thing I would be able to do is take a look at bringing everybody together and looking how we can provide more transparency within the city. Okay, I want to make sure that not only is City Hall being sort of in real time looked at by the people that want to sort of find out what's going on in City Hall. But I want every particular crown or city corporation, like the community homes. I want the Sony. I want the Union Station. I want all these sort of be transparent. So transparency is my biggest concern, because we raise a lot of money, taxpayers are paying a lot of money, but the money is being squandered. So I want to try and eliminate that as quickly as possible. And then I want to have accountability. Who's in charge of the grids? Who's in charge of the transit? Okay, why are we having all these road repairs? Why are we having all this construction that goes on endless? We need somebody that's accountable and coordinates the activity within Toronto. So there have to be various CEOs that are in charge of that. There's accountability. And then I want to get results. But I want to get those results under budget, not over budget. Like if you know about the Sony theater, they spent over $40 million overrun. How did that happen? How did that happen Union Station? How come basically we're having all these problems? So I want to get that under control. So that's one of my first platforms, to be able to try to organize and bring in the 21st century technology, because my background is, with Xerox technology and also I have a software company. But I want to bring in that technology to be able to make sure that people are able to see what's going on and have a voice in making sure that we don't overspend.
Let me explain to our audience. Erwin 咧有呢個即係佢個藍圖咧就係一個200億嘅藍圖咁我陣間問佢點解係200億咧？咁喺呢個200億即係20 billion 裏邊咧，200億裏邊咧，佢就話其實佢就心目中咧係用15億咧去搞嗰個，佢用 mobility 咧，其實係講交通啊。When you say mobility, it means transportation,
yes.
Subway and streetcar and everything.
And also electric buses, double-decker electric buses.
Yeah, okay. 咁佢用 mobility 呢個字咧，就係話啲人喺即係因為我哋知道 Toronto 係好多交通嘅問題啊，有好多大廈咁樣，咁所以喐動係一個問題嚟嘅。咁佢就諗住係150億裏邊咧，就愛嚟做呢一個即係事幹嘅。咁當然正好咧，佢就話即係而家就 Liberal 上咗場啦。咁當中 Liberal 嘅承諾咧，亦都撞啱係有150億係搞呢個交通嘅問題。咁希望嗰方面咧應該對口會落實嘅。咁另外咧，其實有幾個關鍵嘅，佢講咧都講得幾，即係我哋咁聽落係幾好嘅，就係話喺 City Hall 裏面咧，佢想將個 transparency 個透明度係搞咗出嚟，即係好多大型嗰啲 Sony Centre 啊，有好多大型嘅啲 Rogers Centre 啊嗰啲嘅透明度咧，即係點解會咁樣點樣使錢法咧？佢想將嗰個佢用個 transparency 咧個透明度出嚟。第二咧就係第三咧就係話嗰個 accountability 啦。即係我哋亦做即係問責性啦，即係話到底點解要咁樣使個錢呢？咁佢想呢一樣嘢咧係搞得清楚好多嘅個 accountability。咁再者咧佢就提到咧講嗰個 result 啦，即係個 budget 嗰方面，即係佢係想即係唔好大使啊，係要 under budget 啊，即係話點解會使咗4000萬喺一個 centre 度一個 theatre 度啊？點解 Union Station 使咗咁多錢都好似仲未有嘢見到啊？咁佢想見到個result 嘅，即係個成效嘅。咁以上所講呢，因為佢自己係技術方面嘅人才啦，即係佢寫軟件啦，喺 Xerox 度做過啦。咁佢係希望咧喺個 technology， 即係喺個科技上咧，令到將所有嘢咧個 result 啦、問責啦、transparency 啦，都能夠希望用一個有系統、有科學化嘅方法咧嚟到俾大家係見到嘅。I just explained what you mentioned about all these points. So about that 20 billion, so why not 30 billion? Why not 10 billion? We want to spend less, and where does the money come from?
Well, for the mobility，
我就想問下咧，就話譬如話佢話200億啦，咁我話咁點解唔係100億咧？點解唔係300億咧？咁啊好啊，但係啲錢喺邊度嚟咧 ？So where does the money come from?
Well, the money comes from government, private, and creative funding. So for mobility, the $15 billion, which makes up the biggest portion of that, that comes from what I call municipal transit bonds. So what we want to be able to do is we basically have $10 billion in municipal transit bonds. So that's like a mortgage on your house that you pay over like 30 or so years, and the people can buy bonds and get a small interest on that. Secondly, it comes from what I call a GTA lottery. We have lottery tickets for everything. So why don't we have a GTA transit lottery tickets, okay? But that money has to go specifically to mobility, okay, to improve the infrastructure and eliminate the gridlock within city. Then I want a debit card, okay? So I don't want the tokens. I want to be able to have what I call the Toronto Trillium debit card. So that's like the city then gets about 1% of that. So you can use the debit card to buy things, and tokens and all of those things will go on a debit card, and so you don't have to, you just sort of walk through the turnstiles, and it picks up the fact who you are.
And for your knowledge, for that we have Octopus in Hong Kong.
Yeah, you have Octopus, which is that's where I got the idea when I was in Hong Kong. You know, I said, this is amazing. You go in the store, you can buy milk and bread,
things, yes.
You know. But so at the same time, it belongs to the GTA Transit. So 1% of that, the funding goes back into people that need support. So some people, they say, well, why don't we have homeless? We have people that can't really afford it, but they're trying to get a job. They make very little. So maybe we help to subsidize it from the money that we are bringing in through the lottery and through the transit debit cards, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things that we can do that way to be able to help us to be able to make sure that it's a sustainable money coming in specifically for that mobility aspect. Mm-hmm. The other thing I want to be able to do is for the prosperity, there's a $3 billion for that. So what does that mean? Well, there's a $1.5 billion being spent and creating, down at the CNE in Ontario Place, a world-class entertainment family complex. Okay, so you have families and adults and youth. So it's a complex that allows world-class acts, world-class situations to come into city. So I want to generate tourist dollars. Okay, right now we have 16 million people come to Toronto. I want to increase that to 25 million. I want to put attractions there so we get tourist dollars, not paying property tax money and land transfer tax money. I want to eliminate that by able to bring in money from tourists and from business conventions.
Okay, let me explain to our audience. 就佢Erwin 咧有幾個好具體嘅講法啊。我話即係你200億咁點樣嚟啊咁樣。咁佢話150億嗰度咧，佢就話搞嗰啲交通啦，即係 mobility 啦。咁啊錢點樣嚟咧？係咪又收稅？我哋好怕嗰啲嘢啦嚇。咁佢又講咗幾個又幾有趣喎。咁佢第一咧就話100億裏邊咧，即係我哋講緊150億啊。譬如咁100億咧就係從嗰啲叫 transit bond。即係債券啊，發債券其實好似 mortgage 咁啦，即係其實即係發嗰啲債券，我哋借錢俾佢，咁佢會還翻俾我哋嘅，即係用嗰啲利息啊，有一個財技嚟嘅嚇。咁債券呢樣嘢我哋都聽過喺唔同嘅 forum 裏邊嚇。咁第二樣嘢咧就係話彩票喎。lottery 咁啊，我哋649啊，好多個彩票嘅，咁佢可以喺其實特別做呢一樣嘅彩票啦。咁嘅彩票係政府係收一啲錢噶嘛。咁譬如每人買1蚊，咁啊就100個人100蚊咧，咁啊就10蚊攞咗去政府咪搞呢啲基建咯。咁其他90蚊就俾佢贏咗攞，咁都係一個幾得意嘅一個構思啦，係一個mobility 嘅 GTA lottery。咁呢個係幾特別嘅睇法。第三咧，頭先我即係有 interrupt 到大家，就係話佢又睇得到嗰個 debit card 啦，即係好似我哋八達通嗰樣嘢啊，即係八達通嗰樣嘢我哋周圍去好方便啦。但係如果佢話佢入邊嗰度徵收，譬如話1%。咁嗰個咧，嗰啲錢咧已經可以擺咗喺個市政度運作嘅，咁呢個係一個幾好嘅主意，呢個我就未聽過嘅。咁其他咧，另外有一個30億啦嘅 prosperity 嘅一個計劃喺佢嘅腦度諗到，就係話係譬如喺 CNE 嘅附近咧做一個叫 family complex， 咁係一個大型嘅國際性嘅事幹啦，係招攬嗰啲遊客嘅。咁啊，遊客嚟使錢，咁啊各方面嘅嘢咧都係即係賺到錢啦。咁所以又聽落又即係嗰200億或者嗰150億喺個 mobility， 又似乎又唔係話一個空談嘅嘢，又幾有計劃咁樣嘅嚇。Let us know what else you can do or the voter should vote for you rather than other
I just
other
want I just
candidates.
want
Yeah.
underneath mobility. One streetcar costs $6 million. I'm looking at a Tesla electric double-decker that costs $1 million. You can get six electronic buses. Okay, that doesn't, and you don't have to put streetcars. You don't have to put tracks and islands. So that to me is basically the way to go. Okay, it's
Technology too.
Technology, right?
Okay.
So and it's a tourist attraction because it's a double-decker bus and so on. So the other thing we're looking at is basically making sure that we have the business conventions and small businesses. It's very, very important to have small businesses. So I want to tie that into what I call the colleges and universities, MOOC, which is massive open online courses to improve the productivity of Toronto. Okay, so the productivity in Toronto hinges on how more effective the employees are. So that's one program I want to introduce. Okay, tie that into small, medium-sized businesses.
Okay, so I'll explain this to our audience, and thank you for joining our show.
Okay.
最後頭先Erwin 我問佢仲有啲咩其他提議啦，佢一個好 specific 嘅就話，譬如話嗰啲而家公車streetcar 係600萬一架，我唔知咁貴嘅原來嗰架公車係600萬一架。咁另外如果調轉佢話用過另外一種叫 Tesla 電嘅，只係100萬一架啫。即係呢個可能係Erwin 睇到好多地方可以慳到錢，或者可以改變多倫多嗰個市政面貌嗰樣嘢。時間又差唔多啦，都好多謝 Erwin 同埋Flora 即係佢太太啦，即係上嚟參加我哋嘅個 interview 啦嚇。咁就希望大家多啲出去投票，多啲參與。多謝大家。
以上內容純屬個人言論，所提及嘅政綱均以嘉賓原話為準，並不代表本台立場，敬請留意。本台立場，敬請留意。本台立場，敬請留意。本台立場，敬請留意。